just when you think all the A spots are gone, all the B spots have surf schools, all the C spots are crowded, it's just a matter of a little travel to find adventure and solace and silence. And it's all out there still right now in 2024. You have zero excuse to carp about crowds and the overblown nature of social media and overexposure and everything has been seen and photographed. Not the case at all. And I would urge anyone who's having second thoughts about remaining a surfer due to crowding and the totality of exposure to branch out and go tripping.
Are you ready, boys? Start swimming.
That's Scott Hulet. I'm Jamie Brissick. This is Soundings, brought to you by the Surfer's Journal. The Journal is a member-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Outerknown, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. More like a book than a magazine, the Journal delivers 136 pages of independent storytelling every 8 weeks, covering the people, culture, travel, and art of surfing. To learn more and to subscribe, please visit surfersjournal.com. This episode of Soundings is presented by Costa Sunglasses. If you're anything like me and you spend lots of time around the water, then you know just how important it is to have a good pair of shades. And since 1983, when a group of intrepid outdoorsmen set out to make sunglasses that could stand up to the harsh environments they regularly encountered, Costa remains the choice in eyewear among those committed to life on the water. So whether you're diving in, climbing aboard, suiting up, sliding one, leaning back, or all the above, head to costadelmar.com to grab your pair and to see what's out there. A writer and editor from San Diego, California, Scott Hulet's known throughout the surf sphere for his work with the Surfer's Journal, which he edited from 1999 to 2019, and where he remains as its creative director. Scott is an ace with words, on the page and off. In my decades of lunches and missives and back and forths on all things surf culture, I'm always struck by his ability to distill what would take most of us 10 words down to 2. That's why I was thrilled to hear about his new book, Flo Violento, a collection of more than 30 years of his published works, focused on his lifetime spent traveling throughout Latin America. I'm reading now from the book itself, from a piece titled AKA Stoners. The distance and expense in time and treasure were the first filters. The language barrier and parochialisms were the others. And then there were the jejenes and the mosquitoes and the no-see-ums. Matanchen Bay is surrounded by an exquisite wetland, latticed with lagoons, creeks, and oxbows teeming with all manner of life. Indeed, the bulk of area tourism comprises bird fetishists and crocodile voyeurs. Insects are the state flower. Cumulus swarms descend at gray light, back off to tolerable in the midday heat, and then find their tallest gear in the evening. The place is defined by them. As a surf resource, it's also defined by a narrow swell window. One could sit steaming and scratching for months on end waiting for something, anything to wrap in. Which is just what a handful of early ferals did, especially during the draft years. For those lucky or stalwart enough to score swell, the main wave at Matanchen, Las Islitas, was the sort of experience one didn't soon forget. On a well-foiled period point tanker, one could stall and dance around the pocket for upward of a mile, milking it until the perfect little crackler committed seppuku somewhere down near the Jalisco border. End quote. Scott and I spoke in the conference room of the TSJ offices in San Clemente. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hello, James.
We go way back, and so I can kind of span the decades and think about when I first met you. But what I want to know is, when did you first realize that you were interested in writing and documenting surf culture?
Oh boy, it precedes surf culture and surfing for me. My mom taught me to read when I was 3, and my dad taught me what to read throughout my youth. And I started making books when I was 6.
Wow.
Little hardbound, Brad stapled books, and I have 4 or 5 of those from my childhood. And then I got a job as the editor of the junior high yearbook when I found there were no males on the staff. And that whipped me into being surrounded by interesting women, young, big girls. And that was fun for me. And they enjoyed my company as a weirdo. And then that continued to like high school newspapers in glancing blows. And then in college, university, I was a writing major there, of course. And I did art reviews for the student newspaper and lit journals. And yeah, it kind of grew out of that. So I knew I would be a writer / editor from the time I was very young.
At that time in college when you were writing pieces, and even earlier when you were editing the school newspaper, were there writers that sort of jumped off the page at you?
Let's bring it back to surfing right now then.
Okay.
Because that man for me, as a skateboarder in high school and then a surfer, the man for me was Craig Stecyk.
Me too.
Yeah, when I was 16. Reading his early pieces on Venice and Dogtown and Curse de Chumash.
Yes.
That would have been 1976. That just dropped the scales from my eyes. And I saw a blend of outsiderness, lit savvy, artistic sensibility, a little fuck you, and historical relevance and relativity. And it just opened a new world of possibility in documenting surfing for me.
You just described Craig Stecyk so well, and I've always tried to do the same, but not so well. But yeah, it's interesting, and I think thinking about it, because I had the similar experience primarily through the skate magazines before I'd even started surfing. Mm-hmm. And it was I already felt like I was sort of being introduced to this subversive world. Somehow Craig captured the written version of what we were seeing in the magazines on the page.
Well, yeah, and he's so polyglot because he makes photos, he makes art, he writes. He's a crafter and builder and a collector and a hoarder. And all of that is writ large in anything he does. Mm-hmm. I don't do that, but I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, me too. When did you begin your work in magazines?
Magazining, that would have been in university. I was writing for a arts and entertainment magazine called Revolt In Style. A Brit out of Pacific Beach hired me. And I did art reviews, music, a little surfing. And yeah, that was the beginning for me.
And during these college years, where did surfing fit in your life?
Oh, it was primary. I was all in. Mm-hmm. I was lucky to meet older gentlemen by 4, 5, 6 years in my teen years who were super hardcore shapers, surfers. They had worked in Hawaii under Tom Parrish. And when they came home, they took me under their wing and coached me. Not coach, but taught me what was important. And yeah, so surfing was everything. Everything.
Yeah. San Diego specifically has such a rich culture in so many ways, but certainly board building. And the other thing I've learned coming from LA and having spent a lot of time down there, the coastline, the waves, it's very, you can surf a lot. The waves are good. There's a lot of great waves.
Yeah, there are. There's a lot of okay waves, which I needed at that point just to, transit from kook to intermediate. And yeah, great places in OB and Del Mar, places no one would consider great waves, but fine for getting your reps in by yourself. That was good.
Yep. So segueing from college into your career, what was the first published piece, first magazine in the surf realm?
Well, it would have been a little surf gambit in that magazine I mentioned earlier, Revolt.
Okay,
And
so,
then-
so Revolt was covered surfing as
Yeah,
well. Okay.
yeah. Under my tutelage, they did.
Uh-huh.
And after that, little circular bullshit, like a little controlled circ newspaper style zines. Those are good. Like Kema was one out of
yeah.
Dana Point.
Sure, I remember that.
And I during that time I met a local San Diego writer called Chris Aarons, and he kind of wanted to work with me, and the feeling was mutual. And he hired me to come on board a longboard magazine published out of Huntington Beach. And I did that. I was running a surf shop with my friend in Lucadio. And he hired me for that. And then there was a breakaway magazine called Longboard Quarterly. And the publisher of that offered me a full-time job as editor. And I did the math and liked what I saw. So I did that. And that gave me entree to writing and shooting heroes of mine, like Art Brewer, Steve Pesman, Divine, folks like that. And that was kind of a go-ahead play for me. A vow of poverty also, but go ahead anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are a lot of vows of poverty in the surf world.
Yeah. Oh, writing. Yeah.
From Longboard Quarterly to Surfer's Journal, how did that go?
Yeah. Okay. So I was the founding editor at that Longboard Quarterly, and out of the blue, I got a phone call from Steve Pesman. He'd been scouting me and offered me the job, which I didn't take long in accepting. And that would have been 99, maybe. Makes sense? Yeah, and I took that, and off we went.
Wow. So, Scott, we worked together for a long time at the Journal. You were both the editor and creative director.
Exactly. Yeah, now I'm freelance, and the Journal is my client, my star client, and it's a relationship I cherish, obviously, thanks to my provenance here. And, yeah.
I always admired your broad scope of all facets of the surf culture. The skill to look at all the submissions that I'm sure you would have gotten for all these years and pick the ones, the pieces that are going to stay relevant and mean something. It's a unique skill.
Yeah, I guess so. That came from being a reader and going to school on Severson and Pesman and Campion and Stecyk and Brewer during the 70s and 80s as a reader, and finding that the things that attracted me to them were still in play. And that was that, people and context and history and travel and your references playing such an important role in how you convey that surfing topic. And my references are really broad in a geeky way. So that informs my choices for sure.
So you've got more time in your hands now. You're less busy with the Journal. What have you been up to?
Still creative director here, for lack of a more accurate term. I'm more the charge d'affaires. I go out in a broad way and using a venal term, cool hunt. And I do that a lot. That's just part and parcel of who I am. So the last few years, James, I've been traveling a lot, writing much more. It's hard not to talk about some events that happened in my life in my 50s that led to this. But yeah, I travel, I get in the water, I fish. My beat is Latin America,
Yep.
South America, Central America, the Caribbean, Mexico, primarily Mexico. And I live down there part of the year. And working remote is an absolute blessing, obviously. And that's my hustle these days. And I work for magazines and custom publishing books and such. I write intros to books, many, and I work for Mexican tourism. Yeah.
You've worked with some of the biggest shall we say voices. When I say voices, I mean that might apply more to writing, but that also applies to photography in this case, and filmmaking,
Yeah.
and art making. I mean, all the luminaries of surf culture, let's say. Is there a piece that you're most proud of that you were involved in?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah. If I went home and had a cognac and thought about it, I could call you at 2 a.m. and go, oh, shit, this one.
That's what
But right now, yeah.
we've always had, this sort of friendship, and I like that.
Right.
What about any period, any sort of 3-5 year window that you felt things were most interesting?
Right now.
Great.
Yeah, right now.
I'm with you. I
Far
like
and
this.
away.
I like this.
Yeah.
It's interesting because for so many people who read surf media, let's say, I mean, I think the heroes are typically the folks who stand on the board the best. People like you and me, we pay attention to more documentarians, let's call it, writers, photographers, filmmakers. But at least for myself, I'm always, my heroes in many ways are the folks who are sort of making sense of it all versus the ones who are the stars on stage. Have you had some great relationships with writers, photographers, filmmakers?
Of course, yeah. And the fact that you, James, and me are talking in this way, it's a little weird because you're a magaziner and so am I, and you're a surfer and so am I, and there's a log rolling aspect to us discussing this, and we could veer into really vertical topics like this. But overall, yeah, I got to meet my heroes. And by heroes, I don't mean the surfers necessarily, but they tended to be artists and writers and shooters. And that would have been, of course, Stecyk, who's a dear friend and a mentor of mine. And Art was, and Steve Pesman, obviously. We have a kinship, an affinity, mutual, I hope. And meeting writers like Jim Harrison was spectacular. And for better or worse, Mickey Dora became a presence in my life on many occasions.
Any memorable exchanges with Dora?
Yeah, everyone was, of course. I met him initially, through a friend in OB. He was coming through town, and I made his contact and helped him out. And then he moved in with a friend in Solana Beach, where I lived for a period. And I went surfing with him there a couple times and chatted and japed and fenced, verbally. And mostly I just listened. And it was remarkable, because he was so influential for so many people on the way a surfer attacks life. And by that would be travel, culture, artful dodging, disappearing. On the flip, obviously, we could, go down that rabbit hole because he was diabolical.
Yes.
In many ways.
Yep.
But anyway, that was, they always say, don't meet your heroes, you'll be disappointed. In my experience, it's been the opposite.
That's so great.
Peter Beard was a cherished reference point for me in my 20s. And the fact that I got to hang out with him via Art Brewer and Tony Caramonico in Montauk was flashpoint in my life.
You've never really followed pro surfing, or it's not really been your beat, so to speak, to cover kind of what is now the WSL, what was the ASP back then.
The IPS before that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not my beat. Obviously, like any surfer, I'm fascinated by that level of performance, and they are the best surfers in the world, no doubt. But the organized surfing bit never appealed to me. That's, why I chose surfing, because it wasn't organized and team and trained and rah-rah. That's not my jam.
Rah-rah is such a great way of putting it.
Yeah. So anyway, thankfully, the writers and magazine makers like Severson and Drew and Pesman, the guys you come up on, or I used to, felt the same, mostly.
Yeah.
And that worked. So I landed here, and it was easy to continue from that frame.
Can we talk about events that led you to this period in your 50s, or would you rather?
Sure, no,
Okay,
that's
let's
fine.
talk.
Yeah, I had kind of the 3 burials of Scott Hulet in my 50s. I had some health issues. I had a stage 4 hepatitis that almost took me out. A short round of chemo knocked it out. I got cleared. And then 2 years later, I had an Aztec ritual of an open heart surgery to repair a valve that was leaky and weird since my teen years. And I recovered from that great. Then I had a stroke, and that was a major event. It
Yes.
wasn't a minor one. And that freaked me and everyone around me out. But I rallied through a 4-month course of therapy, physical and speech. And I recovered from that. And after those 3 events, I just self-evaluated. And as one does, when you get your eggs scrambled. And I decided, wow, I was a hard worker for decades, and now it's time to be a little more selfish. And that meant to me writing a lot more, traveling a lot more, getting on the ocean a lot more. And I've been doing that now for 4 years.
Knowing you for over 25 years, my impression is that the stroke, and I remember when it happened, I remember coming to see you shortly after, and it was a big deal, but you seem to have fully rebounded, and you're kind of embracing life more than I've ever seen you.
Well, yeah, thanks. Hopefully not in a haphazard way. I'm really focused on my beat and my career, such as it is, and traveling. So those are easy things to embrace.
Yes. Before we go too far down the track, what was it like having a stroke?
It was far out. I was in bed, and I tried to bring a cup of coffee up to my lips, and I couldn't. I go, whoa. And I stood up and felt off. No pain, no flashing light, just kind of crumpled. The paramedics took me to the hospital, and they said, okay, we're going to give you this medicine. You got here in time. They checked my chart, and they said, no, he can't do that. He's already on blood thinners pursuant to his heart condition. You're going to have to write it out, they said.
Wow.
So I wrote it out. It was shocking.
Wow. So I've known you all these years, and when you've had a free window of time, you've zapped down to, shall we call it Baja? We'll be as general as Baja.
That's fine.
We won't mention names, specific locales. What's your draw? I know you speak Spanish. What's been your interest in Latin America?
Oh, boy. That goes way back, too. My grandfather had a cabin in northern Baja in the 60s, and from age 3 up, I went down there with my dad and family. So Baja's been part and parcel of my existence since birth. And I come from a little Navy hick town called San Diego, and that granted me access to the border on a weekly basis all my life. So yeah, it's just part of me. And when I became a surfer, obviously during high school, we could dart down and surf Baja Malibu in the morning and be back by second period.
Wow.
So that was a gift. And then throughout my college years, you forge deeper. And I was lucky to find a zone I really, really connect with. And it's been pushing 40 years. And I go there every winter during, a couple minus tide cycles and camp and recharge and cook and surf and fish and sleep. And you come kind of circle tidal, I think is the word, where the tides define what you do. You rise at dawn, go to sleep at dark, and it's really, really good for me.
Fishing has always been a big part of your life.
Not always.
Okay.
No, I was a dabbler. My dad was a fisherman, and my grandpa and my great-granddad. And I would dabble in Mexico, fishing off the rocks and near sandbars for halibut and for food. And, shuck mussel, all that thing. And I got into fishing hardcore about 10 years ago. Yeah, and that's been a great way to get on the water and kind of leverage everything you know from surfing, currents, tides, resource, ocean knowledge, and that really gives you a whip in fishing. And it's been a comp practice for me ever since. And I made dear friends who are commercial fishermen and charter guys, and they became friends. And I was asked to start a journal-style magazine about 10 years ago. And embraced the los dos, as they say.
And so having spent time with real serious fishermen, do you draw parallels between that and surfers?
There are some, and a lot of them surf, but it's far more kind of redneck. And surfing comes from upper middle class mostly these days. So there's a difference kind of politically and philosophically. I don't care about the former, but love the latter. So, there are some differences.
The idea, what you just described as being in Baja and according to tide, swell, etc., you either surf or fish, but the kind of holistic practice of it all is so appealing. I remember years ago talking to you, and you'd gone surfing with a mutual friend of ours, a great surfer, at a place where very few people get to surf. And you described kind of surfing and then taking a little break, and then the waves getting better, the tide getting right, and having a single tecate and I think it was a flour tortilla smeared with refried beans from a can. And I remember you described it so beautifully, Scott, and it kind of, for me, it reminded me of my entire surfing upbringing and the kind of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the sand with, wet, shivering hands. But that, I guess my point is, I didn't ask you how good were the waves, but you painted a picture that was so beautiful of the kind of experience and the rhythms of going surfing.
Yeah. I'm a far bit more bratty in my dining habits, even when camping these days, because food is so primary to the outdoors. Everything tastes so much better. And we're dining on fresh fish and mussels and clams and lobster and fin fish. And it's beautiful. And to have a Dutch oven and build some potatoes lyonnaise as a side kicker and a nice wine and a solid tequila or mezcal is just ramped up in the wilderness always.
You presented beautifully, and you've presented it beautifully in some of the pieces, essays, travel pieces, etc., about Latin America. And you now have a book out, Flo Violento, a Scott Hulet omnibus.
Yeah, I do. It's a collection. It's kind of lazy to my mind. Collections always are. But anyway, yeah, it comprises 30 years of Latin America travel. The bulk of it more recent from this phase I'm in over the last 4 years that inspired this. And it was floating around with an agent for a while and not sticking. And then out of the blue, the Pesmans asked me if they could publish it. And I said, of course. I love this relationship. And everything we do here is so dialed and find out. And it was a no-brainer for me.
Is there a piece that you're most excited about in the book?
No, that's hard to say. It's like naming your favorite child. My fear was that some of the older works wouldn't stand up in any way. They'd be regrettable and embarrassing. But having just read it again in blue line form, the final proof, I felt pretty good about it overall. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Having spent time down there in some of the heavier states, you've seen some stuff.
Oh, you tend to. But in my life, I've never been at risk. And I'm down there a lot. And a lot of that is due to how you comport yourself and who you roll with and don't roll with. And some of that is being the gray man and not standing out. And the other part of that is embracing the fact that you're not fooling anyone. Everyone knows who you are, what you are. And if you wear some of those telltale signs that confirm people's belief in who you are, meaning you're a gringo, you're a, quote, tourist, that takes the onus off them and off you. Right. And everyone relaxes. And that includes places in kind of backcountry, Sinaloa, and I love Sonora also. And that has sketchy places, obviously.
Yep.
But I haven't had problem one. You know, I don't like tourist areas. I like anyone I hope does, authentic, real shit. And you find that in neighborhoods and in big cities, Latin cities. And there's no Latin city I've found that really hairs me out. And part of that is probably because I grew up near and in Tijuana. And that is a city that's broad-shouldered and sprawling. And the eastern part of the city is as sketchy as anywhere, I think, in the world. But the center of the city and the what used to be Cartalandia, the cardboard village, it's now Zona Rio, much safer and what they call fresón, kind of yuppified. It's fine now, but if you want an eyeful, you can poke into the southeast of Tijuana and check it out. And that'll remind you who you are and to be thankful and vigilant. And it's good for you.
Over the years, you and I, probably once a month or maybe every 2 months, we've had very relaxed editorial meetings, let's call them editorial lunches, and we've talked about pretty much everything but sort of work stuff, and then we sort of find it at the end. One question I've often asked you is, what's most exciting in the surf world now? And you've always hit on things that I maybe am not thinking about or paying attention to, but right now, if I were to ask you that question.
Oh yeah, you always ask that, and it always kind of it catches me by surprise. But I would have to say, alluding to you asked me earlier, what was my favorite period in surfing, and I said right now, despite surfing being so fractalized and overblown and oversubscribed and just done in a media and marketing way, there's never been a better time to embrace the adventure of surfing. And that's the real appeal to me always. And just when you think all the A spots are gone, all the B spots have surf schools, all the C spots are crowded, it's just a matter of a little travel to find adventure and solace and silence. And it's all out there still right now in 2024. You have zero excuse to carp about crowds and the overblown nature of social media and overexposure and everything has been seen and photographed. Not the case at all. And I would urge anyone who's having second thoughts about remaining a surfer due to crowding and the totality of exposure to branch out and go tripping. Yeah.
Any favored locations that are featured in the book?
Yeah, of course. Most of them, have found lodging in my heart and brain. And we could talk about, Ecuador most recently. That's a place that's kind of a flashpoint in the news right now. It's always been known as a peaceful country wedged between Colombia and Peru. And they use the US dollar as their currency. But of late, they're going through some strife right now, politically and crime-wise. It's really bad right now. The Venezuelan diaspora has been horrendous. And Venezuela, if you don't know, is run by a communist dictator. And he's ratcheted down the populace in such a way that millions of Venezuelans are fleeing. And they cross the border into Colombia and other places. And Ecuador has really suffered an increase in crime, primarily driven by a record coca crop in Colombia and Peru. And they're all grabbing for the profit from that. And Ecuador, unfortunately for them, is home to a couple excellent ports for shipment all the way across the Pacific to Australia and north, of course, to the cartels in Mexico. So they're besieged right now. But it's actually a prime time for a surfer, not in a misery tourist way, just a thoughtful way, because the tourism is down hard and they need us. And they benefit from us being there. And there's no us there right now. So the waves are empty. And I was recently in the town of Manta in the central part of Ecuador. And it was eye-opening, the variety of point breaks and beach breaks, totally unpeopled, was a mind blower.
Wow.
That was this year.
Is it that people are afraid to go or they just don't realize that it's there?
Ecuador doesn't have a 5-star surf resource, like like Chile does right now. It always has, but Chile is kind of trending for South America surfing. But Ecuador has hundreds of B+ breaks, which is all anyone really needs. So, yeah.
Any other places that have been real appealing?
I'm a fan of Cuba. I've been going to Cuba for a few years now, mostly for fishing and mostly to explore. And the combination of the food, not the food, I'm sorry, the music and the people
Yeah.
and the beaches and the cultural reference points from literature, from the obvious, I just love it. I love flying into Cuba at night. One of my favorite things. And it's an eye-opener. If you've never traveled to a communist country, it'll shatter everything you think you know about communism, especially if you're a liberal arts educated Californian.
Yep.
So that's been really interesting to come to grips with, and I have friends there now I communicate with. So I love Cuba. Mexico still is my home, away from home, and my home. And I love it there. Every state in that grand union, I have a passion for. Recently, I'm a big fan of Sonora, which is I call the other Sea of Cortez, because as a Baja guy, you never even think about where the sun rises across the sea. And Sonora is gorgeous and everything you love about Baja, but no surfers. There's no surf.
Yep.
Now and then there is. There's a guy found a couple little novelty programs that are bitchin'.
Wow. What do you like most about Mexico?
Oh my God. Everything about it. The history from pre-colonial to the colonial period to the current situation of their ascendancy right now is fascinating to me. I love that American business is getting hip to kind of realizing the neighborly possibilities of Mexico and nearshoring away from Asia and to our continent. That gives me hope.
Yep.
And I think that might be, in a weird way, the secret to solving our contraband crisis a little bit, if we really invest there. That's a long topic, though.
Do you, in all your years of paying close attention to surfing, is there a favorite surfer you have? Is there someone that embodies all the qualities that you, or to some extent, the qualities you value?
Oh, a single one? Probably not. Jeff Hackman is interesting for sure. He's lived on Kauai and in France and in Morocco quietly for 30 years.
Yeah.
And he's still surfing, still totally engaged. He lives well by living concealed. That's an old Greek saying. And he embodies that. He's had, he was a bad boy in his day, but always healthy and engaged and keen. So Hackman just comes to mind.
Nice.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful surfer, and I can still remember him in the surf film Super Session, and his quote was, "Sunset Jack so much."
Right. I remember that blurb.
Yeah. Were there any films when you were coming up that were hugely influential to you?
Surf films.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I liked Free Ride. That blew me out of my seat.
Yeah.
In a theater.
Yep.
Merkel's work and Delaney. And let's see, The Sunshine Sea by Mac Freeman is definitely up there. Those two. Oh, Crystal of Voyager by Greeno.
Yeah.
Yeah. The adventure
Yep.
of coastal California, offshore islands,
Yep.
self-propelled skiffs, fishing, all that.
Being a kid in San Diego in the 70s, I'm guessing most of the 70s you surfed through.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, obviously Skip Fry would have been around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a constant presence. Revered in the region I hung out in, for sure. And watching him go through his rituals, showing up at the point with a couple boards in his Converse high tops and his shorts kind of dial in with a little fanny pack. In that fanny pack would have been his little supplies needed for a day at the beach, and his dog at that time, and a hat. And he would have boulders disassembled at the point. And when he'd arrive, he would reassemble a chair out of boulders.
Wow.
And that was his perch. And he would wait for the precise moment to dip his fingers and paddle over the rocks just perfectly. His approach to everything was stylish.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Josh Hall, who is kind of a mentee of Skip in the shaping room. And I remember asking about Skip, and I said, what would not everyone know about Skip? And he said, well, he shows up early in the morning, and he usually rides a skateboard around before paddling out. And he said he has a fanny pack. And I think at this time he did not have a dog. And he said he has a fanny pack, and he's got all this stuff in the fanny pack. And among all those things are dog treats, and he doesn't have a dog. And I thought, what a beautiful thing to say of someone. And then the other thing that I'll never forget about Skip Fry was our mutual friend Garth Murphy was talking, and he grew up in San Diego, and he said, Skip would ride every wave all the way to shore. And he said, it's like eating every last grain of rice in your bowl. You don't leave anything out,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
it would take a man like Garth to articulate it in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Skip and his mentees, they started with Larry Mobile. And that Mobile moved on and started his own label. And then it was Kevin Connolly, longboarder. And then it was Josh Hall. And that tutelage is interesting.
What were your breaks growing up?
Oh boy, in San Diego, after Cookdom, which included Torrey Pines, OB, Mission Beach, I craved, of course, reef breaks, and that would have been the complex of reefs in Bird Rock, La Jolla. That would have been Northbird, Southbird, Hanneman's, Hermo's, kind of that area. And then the cliffs, the South Sunset cliffs, from like a chasm all the way to the point. And there's various tidal solutions down there. They're fun, and I made a meal of that for years. Yeah.
Nice.
La Jolla and the cliffs.
After Cookdom is such a great line, Scott. That could be the title of the book
Yeah,
at some point.
well, you return to it, unfortunately.
Yep. At one point, you and I communicated over text message for about 2 or 3 months solely in Steely Dan lyrics. There was no words in between. It was merely copying and pasting lyrics from songs or pulling them out of our heads, for that matter.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. You and I have broad interests, and some are kind of funny or embarrassing or arch. And that was a funny way to communicate.
But I feel the same way about our communicating in Steely Dan lyrics as probably Josh Hall does about Skip carrying dog treats. It's
There
like
you go.
it's like something. It's such a small thing, but it says so much about a person's character. And I'm referring to your character, not mine. I was just going along.
Right. Yeah, it's endearing and fun. But Steely Dan, Donald Fagen, his literary references are so broad, from Graham Greene to the name of the band itself from Burroughs.
Yes.
So it makes it fun for word geeks like you and me.
Yes. What do you love most about fishing?
I love geeking out with tackle. It's such a dude thing. Learning knots, learning approaches, learning solutions to situational experiences. And I love how it dovetails into Latin America. There's a type of fishing I've kind of tunneled down to. I've done everything you can do in California fishing. That's not a claim. It just, it's a limited deal from swordfish on down to Corbina. But in Latin America, I found I really love fishing in the mangroves. It's very calm, kind of a Huck Finn experience with your shirt off, no shoes, a little cold machaca burrito in the cooler, and it's hot and glassy and still. And mangroves are like the lungs of the planet, and you feel invigorated in them.
Oh, nice.
And the fish themselves are little pargo and cubera snapper. Perfect table fare, and they're aggressive and fightful and fun. So I love that. And that's in Sinaloa and Nayarit and in Baja also. So I love estero fishing, estuary.
Nice. You and I share a love of body surfing.
Yeah.
What do we love about body surfing, Scott?
It's where it all came from. Your first ride was invariably a body surf ride, often with your dad or buddies, and it's a free ride. And to feel that 0 to 60 feeling of surfing, that's where you first feel it, when you're picked up and propelled.
Yeah.
And that's the rush of fall line travel.
Yep.
So yeah, I love body surfing, always have. And in La Jolla, there's this womp culture, extreme, not scream, in close shore break, not on dry sand, but chest deep or hip deep is the dream. And you can spend in a half hour, 20 minutes tubed.
Yep.
It's really fun.
Yeah. It's such a concentrated thing too. The rides are short, but they kind of stay with you. They sear into your memory in a way.
And it's so brief.
Yeah.
If you think surfing is 2 hours of something and 5 minutes of riding, body surfing is just that for sure, because mini womp waves are 4 seconds long.
Yep.
And that's all you need.
Yeah. What do you love most about surfing?
Oh, the totality of the experience. It feeds your brain, your body, your soul, and it provides a reason to not be a tourist, to travel with intent. Job one is finding waves. That's remarkable. I love that. And even though I'm not a core surfer anymore right now, it still provides me cover to dip into outlandish, weird places on the planet. And that's always been there, having the opportunity to go surfing in, say, France. For a writer, you can cover surfing and ride waves and have fun, meet cool surfers and friends, but you experience a place with all your references intact. To go to Paris, you're going to eat at every restaurant you've read and heard about all your life, and hit bookstores you've always known about, and museums, and then also get wet. What better thing to do?
Yeah. And having about a quarter century of time in the chair, behind the desk, in the seat at the Surfer's Journal, what have you learned?
The benefits of being patient and durable. Yeah, that's just not in a plotting way, but in a accepting way. Good stories always come. Good photographs always manifest. Interesting topics always avail themselves. Just be patient and hang out and open, and it comes.
Very nice. Scott, thank you. It's been a joy.
It's always joy with you.
Thanks. Soundings is brought to you by the Surfer's Journal and is produced by me, Jamie Brisick, and Jonathan Shiflett. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Our theme song is Give Me a Wave by Oscar Matumia and Paz Lenchantin. The Surfer's Journal is a reader-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Outerknown, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. The journal is published bi-monthly. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to visit surfersjournal.com and subscribe. This episode of Soundings is presented by Costa Sunglasses, the badge of the explorer. For over 40 years and counting, Costa has remained steadfast in their dedication to not only crafting the most durable, functional, and long-lasting eyewear, but in protecting our waterways and natural resources. Whether you're on the back deck scanning for yellowtail, eyeing a set swinging wide at an empty point, camped out on a bluff at the end of a rotted two-track, or anywhere and everywhere in between, Costas are built to help you see what's out there. Head over to costadelmar.com today to find just the right pair for you, no matter where the water takes you. Thank you for listening to Soundings, and until next time.